who she's apologizing to. Miliband is nowhere has the experience of organizing working people as Diane Abbott.
So you don't think she should have apologized at all?
I don't know for what. I'll meet her. She'll explain it to me. She said nothing was wrong. She said divide and rule is part of the strategy of political whites. And I'll tell you how it happens to this day.
She didn't say political whites for a start, but what?
Well, whites. She will say they like their own type of black.
So look at what?
You understand that?
I think she's right. I'm glad she's apologised. She's right to apologise because it's crass and offensive. It was a crude stereotype of white people, and she didn't mean to do that. I'm sure, as she said, stereotype all white people, since that's the natural reading of it, she should withdraw. Now, when she said it's taken out of context, I actually think it's worse in context, in a way, because she was actually, talking to a black journalist who said, make a quite cogent point, I think, this issue of community leaders, I have some problems with that. Who's representing who decides it? And so it's actually a policing of debate within black communities, about black communities, that says you can't say that in public, that's divide and rule, you're playing into a white agenda of racists. This is, this is a policing of discourse we don't want. But of course all black people don't think the same thing about everything. That's because of, Darcus, you were, campaigning against racism before I was born and was at school, because of the gains you made and your generation made. Actually, maybe we're somewhere else and somewhere more diverse, and we should welcome that progress as well as realising it's not complete.
I mean, I am concerned anybody who tells me something nice about myself. But let's go.
But the point is, if you turn that round, if it was a white MP and they had made a sweeping generalisation about black people, they'd almost certainly be out of a job now.
But why, if it was a white person? No white person ever said it. And if they say it, I have to wait to see who says it, where, and why, and when. So you can't just say if it was a white person. It is not logical.
Well,
I find that Diane Abbott, at this time, is crucial. At the time when Doreen Lawrence and they and us have won that campaign, Diane is itchy to speak, but she has
so
to...
it sounds like you're excusing what was
I'm
bluntly a silly thing to say.
She is my comrade and my friend. And I would say the same thing. And I would have told Miliband, why don't you go to hell?
Do you think this is basically a storm in a teacup on a fairly slow news day with somebody who's had form before?
I think it's obviously a question of think before you tweet, and I love Twitter to bits, and it's not always the place to have nuanced discussions, perhaps, but actually the outrage about it goes too far as well. I think apologise, withdraw, let's move on and have a serious conversation, because with all of these cases about racism at the moment, whether it's on the football field and whatever, there's big serious issues we've seen with Stephen Lawrence, but we're always having a shouting match where everyone's outraged by this. We actually need a conversation.
All right,
about
well, let's have
issues.
the conversation, because Herman Osley, we saw in that report, was talking about the sense of sort of poor white isolation, if you like, as being one of the reasons, possibly even the backlash from the Stephen Lawrence convictions. Do you buy that this week? Of
course there's an issue that if there's resentment and competitive grievances, that's a massive problem. But the real problem is if we then have to choose, you can either deal with the racism that affects the black community or you deal with the exclusion of the white community. We want a fair society that we're all part of. That's why the Stephen Lawrence verdict is massively important. But Darcus was probably the first person 20 years ago to say a sort of multiculturalism where white people have no role except as oppressors will never get us anywhere in our society. We can't have
nobody has ever heard me saying
majority.
anything like that. Diane came into the Labour Party under black sections in the Labour Party because the Labour Party would not have and could not have black MPs. They fought, they campaigned. She became on that issue alone. And the black community, for the first time in human history in this country, could they rely on someone who knew them, where they came from, who didn't have to go...
So, Darcus Howe, what do you make? What then do you make of the reaction, the response to her tweet? I mean, do you think this is a sort of febrile nature of the
I just think it will go away. What concerns me is that Diane is in a shadow cabinet with people who are very inferior to her politically, and she is made Minister of Public Health, and they go out and speak about blacks, and she has to sit there waiting to listen to what the rest of them have to say, which amounts to nothing.
All right, thank you very much. We'll have to leave it there.